When traveling internationally, it is important to familiarize yourself with the culture and customs of the country you are visiting. When surfing internationally, you not only need to know about the native culture, but also the native surf culture. Fortunately, most surfing etiquette is universal. I'm Eric Wall, and in this presentation, I'm going to take you through the basics of surfing etiquette, as well as give you an idea of some of the specific situations you may find yourself in while surfing abroad. Here's me with my latest board casualty. Hopefully through these tips you can avoid having a disaster like this happen while you're traveling abroad. The most important part about planning any surf trip is your preparation. Before you go, make sure to check the forecast. It's best to know the ideal wind and swell directions of the place you're visiting. Also, you should probably know the weather and water temperature to make sure that you pack accordingly. If you're going to some place like Central or South America, or possibly even someplace out in the Pacific Island region, you'll probably be good with just a pair of board shorts and a lot of sunscreen. If you're heading to places that are a little bit colder, such as Europe or Australia, you're definitely going to need a wetsuit, so always be aware of these situations. Another important aspect of your preparation should be to know your resources in the place that you're going. Are boards readily available? How about fins, leashes, or anything else you might need in your travels? In some places, there just aren't surf shops, so it's harder to find these things. Your best option is to call ahead and look around before you go. If you can't get in touch with anybody or it's too difficult to call internationally, try to find somebody who's been and see what they have to say about the situation. Basically, you just don't want to find yourself in this guy's situation. Broken board and no backups. Now his whole trip's ruined. Once you've chosen your destination, it's time to learn a little bit about the culture. One helpful tip is to learn a little bit about the language. Simple phrases and greetings can go a long way in showing respect to the natives. In terms of cuisine, make sure to eat the local food. Not only will it be delicious, but many places depend on tourism and the money that they earn from people like you. Give back for being allowed to enjoy their land. Furthermore, there will likely be flat days during your trip wherever you go, so take some time to research some sites to see and really diversify your travel experience. You won't regret it. These guys look like they're having a good time. The last part in your preparation should be to check the accessibility of the places you're going to be surfing. Do you need a car, a bike, or maybe even hiking boots and a machete to get to the spot of your dreams? It's always important to plan accordingly. This aspect is generally the most difficult one to plan for. Sometimes you just got to get there and see what you can do. Hopefully someone will help you along the way, but you never really know. But fortunately, this can also be the funnest part of any trip. It's all about the adventure that you have and the people that you meet. So get out there and stomp through the jungle a little bit. I mean, look at this guy. He seems to be having a great time. Next up, we need to talk about the types of breaks you're going to be encountering in your travels. Three main types of break are beach break, reef break, and rock break. What you see right here in this picture is a typical beach break. Each break offers different risks, so it's important to have an understanding of the dangers associated with each one. Beach breaks are generally the most accessible of all. In many places you can just paddle out wherever you want, but generally there are some spots that are more manageable than others. Water depth can be an issue, but without the shallows provided by sandbars, there wouldn't be a wave. Because beach breaks have a sand bottom, they're generally the best for beginners to learn on. And once you learn how to surf over shallow sand, making the transition to rocks and reefs, it's pretty simple. That's how I learned. Now, just because I say surfing beach break is good for beginners, does not mean that more advanced surfers can't have fun on them too. For example, Costa Rica has some of the biggest and cleanest waves around, all on top of a sandy bottom. Reef and rock breaks are where you need to watch yourself. Generally, there is only a few feet of water between you and a sharp rock or reef bottom. Inexperienced surfers should avoid these types of breaks, but for the more experienced, these breaks can offer the greatest consistent payoff. Also, a little local knowledge goes a long way. At a crowded spot, pay attention to where other people are entering and exiting the water. There is usually only one place to get in and out without destroying your feet. At these breaks, it is vital to follow the etiquette that I will lay out a little bit later. Whether your wave breaks over a beach, reef, or rock bottom, you may also find yourself lucky enough to be by a point break. A point break occurs when waves break on the same place every time, typically due to some sort of rock jetty. So if you look at this picture here, we have a rock jetty, and as the waves come in, they bounce off the jetty and break at the same place every time. This makes it extremely convenient and easy to find the best place to be on any given wave. You can find point breaks almost anywhere, even here in North Carolina. One of my favorite places to surf is the point break down by Fort Fisher, right outside of Wilmington. Besides the break, it is also important to know a little about the local wildlife. Sea urchins generally coat any rock or reef, and you should be aware which ones are especially poisonous. Also, many areas are prone to jellyfish at different parts of the year, so you may encounter the electric prickle a good bit while you're out in the water. The good news about sea urchins and jellyfish is that the most prevalent ones are generally not poisonous. That doesn't mean that they can't ruin your day. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've been stung by jellyfish or how many times I've had to pull sea urchin spines out of my feet. It's just a pain. Furthermore, sharks are always in the water, though they are generally only a big problem in a few places, such as South Africa and Australia. You really can't do anything about these creatures, so just be conscious of their presence. The thing to remember is that sharks are not like the movie Jaws. They're not out hunting you, so if you leave them alone, they'll generally leave you alone, even the big ones. The next step in the process of surf travel is to get to know your local. Locals are different wherever you go, but there is generally one golden rule to follow all over the world. Respect them. This is their home and you are a guest. While in many places the locals are hospitable, no one likes to see their secret spot crowded with a bunch of tourists. Be wary and be ready to back off to avoid getting jumped when you paddle in. As I mentioned before, using the native language and giving off an air of friendliness is the easiest way to avoid confrontation. The good news is that you probably won't encounter much more hostility surfing abroad than you do in the States, so if you can keep your cool here, you should be able to manage anywhere. Now that you've completed all of your preparation and research, it's time to get into the water. If you're to the point where you're traveling internationally to surf, you should already know these etiquette rules. We all get caught up in the excitement of a good swell, so here's a little reminder. First of all, don't snake people. If you and someone else are paddling for the same wave, the person closest to the peak has the right of way. Don't try to jockey yourself into a position to block them. Also, don't drop in on someone. While snaking can be bad, dropping in on someone's wave is easily the granddaddy of all surfing faux pas. Not only is it incredibly disrespectful, but it can also be very dangerous. This situation that you see in this picture is definitely something you want to avoid. You see this guy right here on the left? He just dropped in on this guy on the right's wave, meaning that the guy on the right was already on the wave when the guy on the left here decided to take off. If you fall and get caught in the break zone, stay in the whitewater and paddle around the rideable sections to avoid getting in the way of other surfers. When duck diving underneath waves, remember to never toss your board. It could get in someone's way or even get knocked back and bash you. If the wave will allow it, split the peak. Then everyone gets what they want. Look how much fun Matthew McConaughey is having with this guy. And most importantly, it's always better to be safe than be sorry. If you are uncertain about your position on a particular wave, back off. Letting a local have the set is a great deterrent for any potential hostility. Don't worry, you can always get the next one. Even when surfing with friends who know what they're doing, it's best not to horse around. Back home, me and my buddies would come at each other in the same wave and try to high-five. However, one time me and my friend Brad mixed up who was going high and who was going low, and Brad caught a board to the head, earning him 6 stitches. So remember, just follow these simple etiquette rules and you should have a good time. Now that I've filled you in on some of the basics of surf travel, I'm going to give you an example of some of the things that you should not do based on my most recent international surfing expedition. Over the summer, I surfed on the island of Terceira in the Azores. I assumed that I would be able to buy a board there and sell it back when I left, a plan suggested to me by a friend when deciding it wasn't worth the $175 fee the airline wanted to charge me to ship my boards. However, there was no surf shop and only one board shaper on the entire island, making it virtually impossible to find anything. Also, when I checked the water temperature, I assumed that I could get by with just a wetsuit top. It was summer after all, right? Wrong. The wind chill was vicious and I was yet again without the proper equipment. In case you weren't exactly sure what I was talking about when I said I was in the Azores, the Azores are a group of islands about 1,000 miles off the coast of Portugal, more or less in just the dead center of the Atlantic Ocean. And this island right here is specifically the one that I was on. Here's a zoomed out view of the Azores just to give you some perspective on its relation to Portugal. Bam, right here. About 1,000 miles from Lisbon to Ponta Delgado, which is the largest city in the Azores. Despite these setbacks, I still managed to make friends with a few local surfers. Andre, a 29-year-old marine science grad student, pictured here, was nice enough to lend me a board in his wetsuit. Since Andre is about 5'6" and 155 pounds, and I'm 6 foot and 185 pounds, the wetsuit was a bit snug, but it worked out. He also took me around to all the good local spots and showed me the best way to get out. Terceira is entirely rock break, and each spot we visited had only one safe route to paddle out at. Even knowing this, I still managed to step on my fair of sea urchins on my way in. Thanks to almost no swell and a less than attentive camera woman, this is actually the only photo of me surfing on my trip. But that's alright. All in all, despite the planning, rough terrain, and culture shock, there is simply no greater experience than this surf trip. The waves, people, and places you will experience change your perception of what it means to paddle out, even in less than perfect conditions. So just remember, be safe and get out there.